Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here. Hey. Look at me.
In this video, I'm going to talk about the biological basis of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia, which is a common long-term mental disorder that causes a large amount of distress and disability. Schizophrenia is the prototype of the category of mental illness called the psychotic disorders. Let me just write that. Psychosis. Psychosis. And psychosis refers to some specific abnormalities of cognition and often, characteristically, abnormal perceptions of reality. These may include hallucinations, which are sensory perceptions without actual stimuli, like hearing or seeing things that aren't actually there, or delusions, which are fixed false beliefs not explainable by a person's culture, like if someone has the idea that someone else is controlling their thoughts. The abnormalities of schizophrenia are often divided into three big categories. So let me just write 3 arrows here. The first of these are called cognitive symptoms. Cognitive. And there can be all sorts of cognitive symptoms with schizophrenia, such as abnormalities of attention, organization, or things like planning abilities. The second big category of abnormalities in schizophrenia are often called the negative symptoms. Negative. And these can include things like blunted emotions or a loss of enjoyment in activities. The third big category are often called positive symptoms. Positive symptoms. And these are typically the things that we refer to with this term psychosis, things like the hallucinations and delusions that are very characteristic of schizophrenia and the other psychotic disorders. But it really can produce these very complex syndromes spanning many different kind of mental functions, from the more thinking type of functions like the cognitive abnormalities, to the more emotional and motivational type functions like the negative symptoms, to the more perceptual abnormalities, these positive symptoms. Schizophrenia, either when their brains have been examined at autopsy after they've passed away, or with special scans that can look at the structures of the brain. But now there are newer kinds of scans that can actually look at the activity in different areas of the brain. And some studies that have been looking at these scans have also noticed in areas of the frontal and temporal lobes, in some of these same areas that the structural abnormalities have been seen, there appears to be a signal that there may be abnormal activity on the kinds of functional scans that we have currently. So a likely possibility is that in patients who develop schizophrenia, something happens abnormally during development of the brain, and that these particular areas of the brain do not develop normally, leading to the disease.
On the 27th of July, 1890, a gunshot was heard near the French village of Auvers-sur-Oise. It was the sound of suicide, the last desperate act of a sick man. His name was Vincent van Gogh. 2 days later, a life of struggle was finally at an end. When he died, Van Gogh was 37 years old and almost completely unknown. Only one of his paintings had ever been sold. He had experienced loneliness, persecution, and ultimately the madness that led to suicide. But his death also marked the beginning of his legend. Before long, it became obvious that Van Gogh had been an artist of genius. By the early 1900s, his paintings were recognized as masterpieces, and the story of his sad, earthly life became increasingly well known. The story of how he once cut off his own ear is now amongst the best-known tales of art history. But the life of Vincent van Gogh would not be so compelling were it not for the greatness of his art, all of it created in a handful of years prior to his death. His works are now amongst the best-known images of Western art.